Welcome, everyone, to Elevate with V. So excited to be here with everybody. This podcast was inspired by my own healing journey. I aspire to share amazing healers and coaches to help us each elevate on our journey so we can keep aligning with our soul's calling and gifts. I can't wait to introduce my guest today, Kimberly. She and I met through our common connection, Michael, also known as a Crystal Queer. We love and adore him, and we would gather every week and have so much fun in his lives. And also, FYI, he was my premiere episode. So anybody that's not checked that out, please do. But I wanted to take the time to introduce Kimberly. She is a writer, an artist, a mystic, alchemist, good vibe intuitive astrologer and tarot card reader with over 50 years of experience, specializing in astrology, tarot, oracles, animal spirits, crystal readings, and energy clearings. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, Vanita. It is so amazing to be here. I'm just so happy and proud of you that you finally launched your dream that we had been guiding you through for a couple of years. So I'm really excited. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. And of course, I just read your bio, and I'm sure people are going to be like, 50 years. When did this lady start? When she was like 1 or 2? What is the story here?
So for astrology, I picked up my first astrology book when I was 7 years old because, my mother had the book. And as I was leafing through that book, I was reading about sun sign archetypes. So, if you know somebody's birthday, you know what sun sign they are. And the more that I read, it started to explain people that I knew in my life, in my young life, and kind of explained why they are the way they are. And I had often wondered, even though I was so young, why people were the way that they are. Some people are so mean and nasty, and some people are so nice and kind. And I was able to match that up with just reading about sun signs. I know it's so basic, but that's how I got started. And I wanted to know everybody's birthday. And surprisingly, I still remember people's birthdays from elementary school.
Oh my goodness.
So I think it was my calling.
Okay, because that is pretty wild. A 7-year-old. So that already tells me that you had access based on people around you. Like, you obviously had this information sitting around, because how would a 7-year-old find a book about astrology? Or so
they were my mother's books. And luckily I was raised and grew up in a very bohemian, yet structured, a little strict household. My grandmother was a healer, and she became a pediatrician so that she could legally practice healing. My grandfather, he was a man of the earth, but he was a butcher. But where his healing came in, typical Virgo, he was out in the garden all of the time. He taught me about the stars, the constellations. He taught me about animal totems, all the different wildlife that we had on our property. I learned so much from both my grandmother and my grandfather, and I still utilize all of that information in my daily life and for my clients.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so amazing. I'll be honest, most of the people I have that come on the show, Kimberly, it's never that case, right? They're all like, they're hiding, they can't show any of their gifts, they have no support. And here you're kind of sharing, like, you had like this perfect environment that was so supportive and nurturing of all these gifts and talents that you were like, yes, here's the book, read it, ask us questions, engage, let us show you. How magical is that?
Really magical. Now, in my upbringing, we were not religious per se. However, I was taught about every single religion. And, so that was beautiful. And my grandparents really instilled just the basic principles of every religion. And it comes down to being a good person. And so growing up, our house was the dividing line between the Jewish neighborhood and the Catholic neighborhood. And, you get to a certain age and your friends, they all want to know, well, what religion are you? Not so much, my Jewish friends never asked me that. They were just very accepting of me being me being kind. But my Catholic friends, they all wanted to know, what religion are you? When were you baptized? Or were you baptized? I'm like, I have no idea what they were talking about. So I go home and I'm like, was I baptized? No. And I said, and what religion am I? And I remember my grandparents telling me, just tell people that we're Protestant, because people don't understand what that is, at least back then, and they won't ask any more questions. So, but when I did tell my Catholic friends that I was not baptized, and this was around age 8, they said some really horrible things to me about what would happen to me because I wasn't baptized. And I looked at them and laughed. They said, oh, you don't get to go to heaven. You'll either go to hell or you're going to be stuck in this limbo. And I said, no, that's not true. And I said, because all you have to do is be a good person and you get to go to heaven. They're like, nope, that's not how it works. And so from that moment in my life, age 8 years old, I already had a very negative flavor about organized religion. It wasn't the religion that I had been taught at home, about all the different types of religion and practices all over the world, because, I was taught about love and being kind and being good and being truthful and honest. And I saw none of that coming from there. So that really kind of sets up my foundation.
Wow, that is very fascinating. I'm just sort of like in awe that you had that surrounding, like growing up, you had such a solid foundation from home, which I think probably also helps so much in your kind of core values, right? Like you're honored even as a child to like explore and to be yourself. So you could stand firm regardless of what someone else said to you. Like, nope, that's not my belief. I don't believe that, and I think that's so amazing. At like a 7-8-year-old, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Right.
So I did want to touch on something because we were talking before we started to record and you were starting to share a little bit. And I was like, no, let's wait until the live to talk about your experience of remembering a past lifetime. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes. So by the time I was about 2.5 years old, and I was able to articulate full good sentences, articulate well. I think I was definitely an old soul because I spoke with very large words at a very young age. I told my family about how I was this man and I had a wife and children and we lived in New York City, and that my best friend had killed me for the money in my pocket. And at that time, I had a great, great, great aunt that lived in New York City. And my grandmother was such good friends with her. So in the car we go, we're driving up to New York City. We came through the tunnel and I started recognizing things and I knew where I was. And we got to a certain point and I had told my family, oh, when I was that man, I lived right up the street from here. And they listened to me. So my grandmother parked the car and said, you want to take me to where you lived? And I went right to the door, and I remember it was a bright red door. It was a brownstone, went up the stairs, bright red door. My grandmother, I saw her writing some things down. She was writing down the street and I guess the address. And I wanted to go in the house. And she said, you can't, because from apparently what I had described to her is that at the time of my passing was probably the early 20th century. So a lot of time has passed, and we're talking, this is the mid to late 1960s. So there are no computers, but New York City had really great records. So we were staying with my aunt for, I guess, you know, a long weekend or something. I can't remember because I was really little. In the meantime, my mother and grandmother had gone to the city library and they did research because they used to keep all the archives, and they were able to verify the name that I gave them, that I was murdered by somebody. It was at around the Great Depression in 1929. And so everything I told them was true, and they were able to verify it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is an amazing story.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've also been able to see spirit. I hear, I don't know if you're familiar with the clairs, clairaudience, clairvoyance. I have all of the clairs, but not all at the same time. They come in different waves, but I'm very clairaudient where I will hear things. I'll hear people speaking, not my own voice, not my inner voice. I also very clairvoyant. I will see things. Looks like, you know, a movie picture in a sense, like a scene in a movie, and then it happens. Claircognizance has gotten me in a lot of trouble because I've known things about people. And the strange thing is that I'll say something to them and they'll say, "Where did you hear that?" Well, you told me. I would never tell anybody. And so, you know, that has really gotten me in trouble because I don't know how it got into my head, but I know a lot of things that I don't want to know about people.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know, you know, on this podcast, we have covered the clairs in different episodes and things like that. I guess what I wanted to find out from you, when was it very early? I'm going to assume yes, since at 2, you're recalling a past life. I mean, I'm thinking a lot of these gifts were already activated for you.
Yes. Yes. They already were.
Wow. And they were greatly encouraged, obviously, in the family that you were. So
Yes. So at age 10, because of the different abilities, my weirdness, as my family calls it, but I think we all have it in my family. My mother got me my first tarot deck, and she got me a mentor because she didn't want to sway her influence. So she got me somebody outside of the family that she trusted that taught me how to read tarot.
oh my goodness, at 10,
At
you were
10, and I
learning.
still have that deck, but I've retired that deck for my own personal use. I don't use it in my readings anymore, but I'm extremely connected to that deck. So yes,
Amazing.
it was
Amazing.
nurtured. Mm-hmm.
Well, and this is so interesting. Usually when I start the show, I usually start the show talking to people about like, okay, well, what took you into your healing journey? Like, what are the incidents? I'm like, does this really apply for you? Because it feels like you actually went on a very different path where you were not only very connected, you were so supported and nurtured in that. I understand that externally, meaning outside, people might not have responded the same way, but in terms of your base, it felt like it was very nurturing and
Well,
supporting.
yes and no, because, you know, I'm still on a personal healing journey, because even though growing up that way, our family was extremely dysfunctional. in part because when you have gifts like this, and I went through this myself in my teens and 20s, it's scary, number one. It's annoying, it's invasive, and you look for things, you look for ways to suppress that by alcohol and drugs, and also violence comes into it when you add alcohol and drugs. So that was very prominent in my family in order to suppress the gifts. However, I had discovered that by doing that, you're only bringing dark entities to yourself, and it actually makes everything worse. In my 20s, I stopped doing everything, and I live a clean, holistic life, and the spirits that show up are a reflection of that. Unfortunately, there are people in my family that are still, they're caught up in that, and they suffer greatly, because I've got to tell you, when you're woke up in the middle of the night and there are shadow entities standing at the foot of your bed, it's frightening. And what wakes you up is your body feels that fear before, your mind can even comprehend what's going on. And it's really scary. But it took a little while for me to realize that what I was doing to suppress those gifts were actually attracting really horrible things into my life. Not only those beings, but horrible energy, and attracting, people that were bringing me down in a lot of different ways. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So let's go back a little bit. So I know you shared that there was some of these things going on in the family. Were you personally involved? Were you also?
Well, so I was so young. My sister is 10 years older than I am. We lived in a multi-generational home, and I was very young. So I wasn't privy to what was going on, but there was a lot of chaos, a lot of turbulence, violence. My mother, up until I was 16, I didn't know, but she was an alcoholic. My sister is still addicted. My mother has passed, but my mother did turn her life around, thank goodness. But yeah, so I remember, like, my earliest remembrance of my sister is seeing her with a bag of pills, and I was only 4 years old. So, like, going back to that. But then I think when you're a product of that, you do those things yourself too. And I was like, oh, this isn't bad, because it does shut the voices off, and it does shut a lot of different things off. Like, I wouldn't be feeling your energy. I wouldn't be thinking your thoughts. And that is why we would suppress, but it actually makes things much worse.
Wow. So then was it when you were a little bit older when you kind of started to indulge because you're like, hey, I just can't deal with some of these things and I'm not being
I would say
received?
early teens.
Wow.
Early teens and into, early 20s. But then I just had an epiphany one day, looking around at the people that were around me, and it just repulsed me in a sense. And I was just miserable all of the time. I was sad. I was depressed. And I thought, there's got to be something better than this. And there was something that my mother had said to me, actually, that just turned me around, and it woke me up. And I thought, I'm never going back to being a person again. And it wasn't a struggle. I was able to just walk away from it all and start fresh. But the wounds, the trauma are still there. Even though I grew up in this supportive family, I didn't get the attention that I needed. And I felt abandoned because I had all the freedom in the world to do whatever I wanted. But you know what? What I really needed was a little more structure, you know? So it's, you know, the grass is not always greener. I think we all come out of our childhoods or even past lives with these wounds that need healing in this life.
100%. And thank you for sharing that, because yeah, I mean, when we kind of started, I mean, it definitely seemed like such a beautiful environment because, oh my goodness, any kid who's gifted, you're just going to thrive. But it's like these pieces, right? Of like, no, there was dysfunction and it impacted you greatly. And, you know, you're probably very blessed that you were able to like, you know, probably get out of it as easily that you did. But you know, what was your process to kind of heal some of these things? Like, obviously you had awareness. You're like, wow, yes, I've come through, but I have so many wounds that need healing. How did you kind of go about starting to heal those
All
things?
right. So have you ever heard of Iyanla Van Sant?
Yes.
Okay, she wrote
Yes.
this book about her own journey. It's called In the Meantime. And I guess I saw her on Oprah maybe, and I went and I got that book and I started reading it. And she explains how we are like a house and we have different levels. And I was in the basement of my life and I needed to get out of the basement. And how do you get out of that basement? Because that's the lowest level. I mean, it was bad. It was dark, Vanita. Gratitude. And even though I felt like I had nothing to be grateful for, I was practicing gratitude every day. I was kind of faking it until I'm, you know, fake it till you make it type of thing. Until one day, I actually had something real to be grateful for. You know, like it just came to me. I didn't have to spend any amount of time thinking about, well, what was I grateful for today in this crap life of a day or, you know, whatever. And I have got to tell you, practicing gratitude, thinking of even just one thing that you are grateful for at the end of the day or the beginning of your day or the middle of your day, it pulled me out of the basement. And then I started to feel better. And what I noticed is after a few months of practicing gratitude, and of course became so easy because then it's a habit. Well, I started to attract different things in my life. I started to attract better people in my life and better opportunities. And life started to get easier. And it wasn't so much of a struggle. And so therefore, my energy level was raising. And that was just perpetuating what I was attracting. It was just like a win-win. And so that's what I've been doing. That's not to say that I don't have dark days, but if my mind starts to go into a dark place, I will stop myself dead in my tracks and think of something that I am grateful for.
Wow, that's beautiful, Kim. I'm so glad you talked about that because that is such an important piece. It's like no matter what you are going through, give gratitude. There's definitely something you can give gratitude for. And I know that I haven't been the best about doing like a practice, but I've gotten into it. So now in the morning, I will not even get out of bed until I have done some gratitude work. So I've made it part of, you know, my kind of everyday routine. And not to say that's the only time I do it, but I just think that's such an important piece. And like you said, it's life altering if people just take the time to do that. But I did want to ask you because, you know, because I've personally been through kind of a very deep healing journey, yes, in the past 3 years. And there's so many things that need to be healed, right? So many wounds that need healing. So what in addition to gratitude practices did you be like, oh, I need to go for therapy, I'm going to try Reiki, I'm going to try counseling. Were there other things that you were doing as well? Or was it like just predominantly you having enough knowledge and confidence and saying, okay, I'm doing my gratitude practices, I'm moving forward? What was
I have done it all. You name it, and I have done it, because it doesn't feel good to feel like poo, you know? And anything that came across my path, I took it as a sign to try it. And if it, if it didn't suit me, then fine, I moved on. One beautiful thing that I began as part of my healing journey was shamanism. Because I am so connected to the earth, I know that it's definitely past life related. Doesn't hurt that I am a Taurus rising, so I'm very much that bull with my hooves in the earth. And I just resonated with shamanism and that whole spiritual side and the animism of life, that everything is living and everything has an energy, and we are all one. Yes, and being able to connect to other worlds through shamanism, through journeying. So that I loved. I'm currently practicing Qigong as a form of energy healing and being able to clear not only myself, but other people that are having issues with medical ailments. I specialize in medical astrology. So if I see something in the chart, I can now clear. I can clear you and then put that beautiful energy back in. I'm a very multi-layered person, Vanita.
I was going to say, I'm like, you did not share this in your
I
bio.
know. Well, I did put down energy healing in the bio.
Yes, but I was like, wait, shamanism? I didn't know about this part. Or
Yes.
that's
Well,
so amazing.
yeah, so that's part of the animal totems that I just feel so connected to. But yes, I have tried everything in the books to try and feel better. And that doesn't mean that I may not circle back and try it again. I'm very open to all of it.
I love it. Well, I know you're a multi-passionate. I've always known that about you. So what would you say, like, right now are like your top 2 or 3, like where you feel like you're really feeling the passion out of all of these amazing things that you do? Where are you feeling most called to these days?
Well, always writing, always painting or drawing. I love that. But I'm so passionate about astrology. I never stop learning about it. There's always more to learn about it. So I can't get bored with that. Of course, I do like my card readings, and I'm really into the energy healing and clearing. I want to expand on that more.
Wow, I love it. I love it. And I'm really excited today because this has been a slightly different format, because usually we were like, oh, what's the healing journey? But I was like, oh my God, we have too many other things that we have to get
I
into.
know.
But I did definitely want to give you plenty of time to like do the astrology thing, because I've not had anyone who's come on who talks about that, who's probably as passionate as you. And we've just entered a new month. This episode is going to come out next week, so it's still going to be early on in March. And I know there's a lot of stuff going on. So, I definitely want to give you room, Kim, to share. If you want to share more about your journey, we can do that. If you want to talk about astrology, you can do that. So this is a kind of like, we just get to create what we want, Kim.
We do. Well, March is huge in astrology. We astrologers have been waiting for this moment for decades, I believe, because there's going to be a huge global shift in energy from the planets that are processing into new signs. And we've been stuck in the energy that we've been in. We've all felt it. We've been through the pandemic. And now the planets are moving on and bringing us something fresh and new. That doesn't mean that it will be pleasant. So we have Saturn moving into Pisces. It's huge because Saturn usually spends about 2.5 to 3 years in a sign. It's coming out of Aquarius, which is eclectic, individualistic, yet humanitarian. And now it's coming into a space of higher mind spirituality, the divine individual, really connecting to our intuition and our higher energy. So that's what the next 3 years is going to be. And that's not always easy. I will tell you that, because it's part of a healing journey. The other big player is Pluto, the planet of death, endings, transformations, new beginnings, and birth, is coming out of Capricorn, which is all about structures and old regimes, moving into Aquarius, the revolutionary, the revolutionist. So it could be a little volatile, but the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was during the American Revolution. But what comes out of it at the end are treaties and peace and good things for all. So, you know, they might start out a little volatile, but those are the two big players. Now, we spoke earlier in the session when we were discussing healing. Today is such a huge day that we're speaking on. However, the energy will carry for quite some time. Chiron is considered the wounded healer. And Chiron has been in Aries for several years, will remain there for a few more. And Chiron, when I'm looking at a chart, I consider Chiron wounds that we've brought in from a past life that we have to deal with in this life. And so with it being in Aries, it's about the self. It is about the ego. It is about our self-worth and how we feel, feeling worthy and just. And so is it okay for me to discuss what I saw in your chart briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why not?
It turns out that you have in your natal chart Chiron in Aries. So you are going through what is called a Chiron return, which happens between the ages of 46 and 53. So what that marks for me is this is a time in your life where you're going to take a look at all of these past life wounds that have held you back up to this point. And you're clearing and healing them. And you're doing it through this podcast. By going through these different journeys with everybody, by putting yourself out there, letting people see you and not worrying. I mean, you may worry about the judgment, but you have nothing to worry about because it's a great podcast. However, that could have held you back from launching up until this point, wanting to, but maybe subconsciously being afraid. And so now healing that wound says, putting myself out there, I don't care what you think, love me or leave me, this is me. And so that's a Chiron return in the sign of Aries.
Ooh, I love it. Thank you. Well, there's a nice confirmation. What beautiful alignment. I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Yes, 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 yes.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing. And, you know, I know enough people that are tuning into this podcast either are familiar or enjoy astrology and like to dabble in it. So I was very excited to have you on to share your beautiful information and knowledge. And I know how passionate you are about it. And what I was going to ask is, I know one of the things that you had shared is that you were very happy to sort of pull the cards for pretty much everybody in March, like all the signs. I was like, oh my goodness, everybody gets to like tune in with their sign. That's amazing. So if you would like to do that, this would be a wonderful time.
I would love to do that. Yay. So what I ask is for everybody to, if you know what your chart is, if you don't know how to pull your chart, I do have an Astro 101 on my YouTube channel. It's fairly easy. But if you do know your chart, you want to pay attention to your sun sign, your rising sign, and your moon sign. And if you happen to have a cluster of planets in any other particular sign, I would listen to those too. For the next 3 to 20 years, the signs of Aquarius and Pisces are going to be under a lot of change. So with that comes all water signs, but also the fixed signs of Leo, Taurus, Scorpio. Lots of changes coming. And I just wanted to throw that out there because it could be a little bit of a roller coaster. So I'm going to start with the sign of Aries. I feel like Aries is closing chapters. And the card that I pulled for you is the water card, which symbolizes purification, regeneration, birth, revival, and cleansing. I am going to keep this quick. Taurus, little bit of a lack of motivation. So you have the Witness card. This is saying you don't have to do anything right now, Tauruses, except for sit back and observe everything. And don't try to control or change situations. You're only sitting back and observing. Geminis, which Vanita, you and I are both Geminis. Words could escape us a little bit this month. We're doing a lot of daydreaming. We could turn a little hermit. We have the wind, and the wind symbolizes the winds of change. And there could be chaos blowing into our lives at the present time. But the nice thing about this wind that's coming through for the Geminis is it clears the way for new beginnings. The wind also carries the seeds that will be scattered across the land to plant those new sprouts. For Cancers, it's super energy flowing, very busy time. So it's important to get grounded. And Cancers, you have the smoky mirror. And the smoky mirror talks about illusions. And it's asking, are you really, do you see what's really happening around you or in a situation? Or are you seeing it through smoke and mirrors? Are you in denial about something, Cancers? So that's why you really need to get grounded, because I think that you're purposely, subconsciously, maybe not wanting to look at a situation because you don't want to deal with it. You don't have to. Just get grounded and come to a place of acceptance. Leos, anxiety calls for decluttering for the Leos. And I love this because the Leos have the Sun card, and Leos are ruled by the sun, which is really beautiful. But this talks about one of two things. It's time for you to come out of the shadows, or if you're one of those over the top Leos, you may have to turn down your light a little bit. But this really is about clearing out the clutter, preparing to come out and play in the sun. For Virgos, eyes wide open, seeing things for how they are, and the Thunder card is coming up. This is also a symbol that the rumblings of something is coming. It may not be that pleasant, similar to the Wind card for the Geminis, that you know that it's coming. Something's building, and you're best off to just focus on solutions rather than the problems. And I wanted to remind the Virgos, you are worthy of a drama-free life. Libras, it's about creating space in relationships. You don't need to be clinging on to somebody. You know, this is about you enjoying your life. And the Crow comes up. And this is about the universal law of truth and magic. And when you speak the truth, when you practice the truth, everything around you that you attract becomes true. And I just love this card because it is the ultimate magic, but it's saying you need some space away from others in order to create this magic and to clear your own thoughts. Scorpio, it's time to give yourselves a break. The drum comes up to say, stop beating yourself up. Accept that you march to the beat of your own drum, and that is okay. The drum is also inviting you to take a bold step in the next phase of your life. For Sagittarians, time to assess where you are and where you've come from. And for the Sag, it is the fire card, which Sages are all about fire. Fire consumes everything that it touches. If you want something to be transformed, put it into the fire. Write it down on a piece of paper, put it into the fire, and allow that smoke and those ashes to go up to the heavens. But it's a big time for assessment for the Sagittarians to take stock of where you are and where you've come from. Capricorns, you're going to be going through it for the next year still, Capricorns, back and forth. There's a lot of back and forth, but the tides are shifting for the Capricorns. I bet you will all be very happy to hear that. The tree of life comes up, and this is about finding your balance between, grounding yourself in the earth and reaching up to the heavens for inspiration. But this is also saying it's time for you to feed and nurture your soul, because the new seeds that you want to plant cannot grow in barren soil. Aquarius, open up because big changes are coming. The Sweat Lodge card is coming up. This is a time for Aquarians to go inward and do a very almost dark soul searching type of journey so that you can come out on the other side. There are a lot of wounds that are going to be dealt with and healed over the next 20 years for Aquarians. It's a very long journey, but it will be beautiful. And last but not least, Pisces, and I know you're a Pisces rising, it's the spiral. Pisces are also going through really huge changes. You could feel very restricted for the next 3 years, but the spiral is the healing journey. And it talks about the spiral down or the spiral up. If you can get to a labyrinth, I would recommend that. Walking in, dumping your woes and worries in the middle of the spiral, and walking out with gratitude. Self-care rules the month for Pisces. And that's what I have. I hope you liked that.
Wow. Oh my goodness. What a bonus for everyone who's tuning into this episode. Truly. It's like, oh my goodness, everyone got a chance to receive a reading. And I love that you kind of kept it succinct, but you got the messages out to each one of us. So I think that is so, so amazing to have that. Now, I know some people are going to be like, hey, we're just listening. What about the cards? If you would like to see the images, you're welcome to watch this on YouTube when this episode releases. But I think Kim did an amazing job of kind of sharing what the card was. So you kind of can envision just based on what she was sharing and how it relates to your particular thing. So definitely a lot of food for thought for each one of us to be like, okay, we have a little idea of what's coming in and what we can put our energy and attention on to kind of, in some sense, get prepared to sort of be in the flow of things, right? So I love that you shared that, Kim. So I wanted to kind of ask you to make sure before we closed out this, session, if there was anything that you wanted to share with people about something that you're doing or working on that you would, want to inform people about? Because I know there's things in your bio that you didn't mention that we touched on a little bit, but if there is anything, I would love for you to be able to share that right now.
Well, being a Gemini, I'm always working on 5 different things at the same time. And when I get bored, then I move on to something else, then I'll come back. And I'm sure you will understand that. I try to get a video blog out once a week, with a written blog. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I love coffee, so I'll always post that. But, you know, I'm going through a little bit of my own healing journey again, because we're always getting hit with something, right? You know, you just when you think things are going good, something just slams you right up the back of the head. So I've really been taking the last couple of months off, in the sense of I haven't been fully emerged. Like, I haven't left everybody in the lurch. I did just do my March forecast, which I also have these cards in that video on YouTube with the charts for the season that are coming up. I am getting excited about the planetary shift, so I feel like I do want to put more work into that, but I need a little bit more time to enjoy the rest of this month before I reemerge myself. So I don't know. It could be anything. I'm a Gemini. Whatever floats my boat.
I
One
love
day I
that.
could be creating art. Next day, you know, I'm doing charts, energy healing. I'm
Love
up
it.
for anything.
I
So
love it. My Gemini sister, listen, if anybody understands, I do. So I love that you shared that you're authentic and transparent about like what's going on right now. And I love that you shared that people can also tune into your YouTube. Of course, everyone knows all of Kim's information will be in the bio of everywhere that this gets posted. And obviously go check out her channels and all the stuff that she's up to. And it's just been such a delight and so much fun to connect with you and to learn a little bit more about, like, you know, your story. And so I'm just so grateful that you said yes to come and join me and to co-create with me today. So I just wanted to thank you so much.
no, thank you. I'm so honored that you asked me.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited. And thank you to every single person that is tuned in today. I hope that there's some beautiful messages that you can take away from this, and definitely tune in to your sign and get your readings, and definitely get in touch with Kim if, you know, she feels like a good fit, if there's anything that she's up to that you're interested in. And I just want to again thank everybody, and I can't wait to catch you all on the next episode.